All right, we're live, everyone. We've got Emily Walsh on here. Emily, it's so great to see you. It's been a long time since we've spoke live to each other in a way like this, or because yeah, for anyone who watches my channel, it's all good between me and Emily. We're friends. Don't worry, it's all good. We've collabed and stuff on videos together. We've done plenty of vegan focused stuff, and we always speak to each other about veganism and stuff like that. But today we're going head to head on a topic that we don't have the same opinion on. So we're going to be talking today about anti-natalism, and obviously one of the things that might make this stream slightly more enticing to the viewer is well, tell us your situation, Emily. Tell us about you.
So I'm currently 31 weeks pregnant.
There it is.
Yeah, I got bigger now. I'm actually starting to look like definitely a pregnant lady.
Yep.
In the beginning of my third trimester, so due in October. Having a baby girl, and I'm really excited. And I've wanted to have a baby my whole life. So, since I was like an adult. And I'm really happy to finally have my first child, and I plan to have more. So.
Yeah, and your experience is, I guess, different from mine. I did want a kid until I was about 20, I'm going to say 24, 25, which is when I first came across anti-natalism. And then once I got looking into the arguments about that, I was no longer convinced that it was the ethical thing to do or that I wanted to do it. And I decided to have a vasectomy in 2020. So two very contrasting life experiences there for both of us. And I just want to say before I start the debate, even though I'm a hard anti-natalist and I'm very passionate about this subject, it's not about any hatred or anything towards vegans who do have kids or who are choosing to have kids or anything like that. Many of the dearest people to me in the animal rights community are parents or are natalists, so it's not about any kind of hatred to any of you or anything like that. It's just that I personally think that this is ethically a questionable thing to do, and we'll be going into that today in the debate. And yeah, basically after coming across many of the anti-natalist arguments, reading into the anti-natalist literature and philosophy, it's definitely something that I'm very strongly against now, the idea of humans procreating. So we can go into that in a bit. Emily, how did you want to do this? Did you want to like open up with your point in the debate, or do you want me to open up and we'll go from there? Or is there any way you wanted to particularly start this?
Yeah, I'm not really sure on, I can't remember the anti-natalist debates. I haven't listened to them in a long time, but I kind of remember them.
For the best.
Yeah, I actually, because me and Patricia Nunes is, we're really close friends. And so like she lives in Sydney as well. So we meet up a bit. Well, she's very busy with her PhD, but we have met up and we have discussed like the anti-natalist, because she used to be anti-natalist and now she's the opposite. Now she's seen evidence, for pro-natalist, and now she's decided she doesn't want to have kids personally, but she thinks that other people should have kids. So we've discussed that, the differences. So I have some ideas of, because I know like I know I've had some anti-natalists say some pretty mean things to me, and I know you're not like that, so that's why I'm cool with the debate, because I know it's more about like a logical thing rather than like personal attacks and stuff. Like I've had anti-natalists say like, because they said that I should adopt, and the thing is that in Australia it's extremely difficult. I wouldn't be eligible because it's very competitive, and I wouldn't be eligible to adopt. And I told him that, and they said, oh, well, obviously if you're not eligible to adopt, then you wouldn't make a good parent. And I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. It's just because it's high competition. Like if there was all of a sudden all these children that needed to be adopted and there wasn't enough people, they wouldn't be as strict, right? So that really hurt me. That was upsetting. But I know you're not like that, so that's good. And I've had some so I'll tell you a little bit more about how I became pregnant. So I tried to find someone, but I couldn't find anyone, and I ended up getting pregnant through donor. So I have a donor, and some people, especially very conservative people, they don't like that because they're like, oh, so you're raising a child without a father, they're going to end up messed up. And I actually have a relationship with the not a like a intimate relationship. I have a friendship with the donor, and he's going to have a relationship, a non-father figure relationship with the child. So he's not going to he's more going to be like the uncle, because I want her to know her biological father. But yeah, I've had some people kind of say like, oh, you should have adopted, and it's like the same kind of thing, like, yeah, that's great, but like I'm not eligible and I don't have the money. So because it's like at least 20 grand like upfront. And if you have a child, it doesn't cost 20 grand. Like they're like, oh well, it costs my, I'm like, no, it doesn't. I think it'll be better if you say anyway, I just thought I'd give some background. But
cool, yeah, no, that was good. Thanks for that. Yeah, and I can open up then if you want. That's fine.
Yeah, because then I can go off what your arguments are, because there's so
Cool.
many different things to do with like why people shouldn't have children. Like you probably know that it's like, oh, the environment, but like it's not, it's an ethical thing, not about, you know, the impact on the environment, and the also like certain like family structures and stuff. So so that's why you should open up.
Cool. Yeah, and I just want to also preface by saying, obviously we don't want any stuff like that, personal attacks or anything like that. However, I will be saying stuff in the stream that will be indirectly, ultimately offensive to parents out there, because by the nature of anti-natalist debates, that is just what's going to happen.
I already know.
People just get triggered by anti-natalists when we just mentioned that the idea, like the very presence of an it's like being a vegan, right? The very presence of someone in the room who says it's ethically questionable that you're doing this or that you've done this, even though they're not trying to offend you in any way, it will ultimately maybe come across as a bit triggering or offensive in any way. So for the people watching, you know, I'm not trying to attack anyone personally or anything like that. That includes Emily. But obviously, as an anti-natalist, I'm going to say some things that people might be like, oh, that was offensive that he said that or whatever. But that's just the very nature of
no
this
one
debate.
likes to be seen as the bad guy.
Right. So it's just a contentious topic by that nature. Okay, right. I'll open up then and we'll go from there. I basically see there as being no good reason to create well-being from nothing. I think it's more important that we prevent suffering from nothing, if that makes sense. I think we have an obligation to not create suffering, but there's no obligation to create well-being. I don't think it matters about creating happiness, creating joy from nothing, anything like that. For me, the main concern is actually stopping from suffering from coming into existence. And there are many, I think, vegan contradictions when it comes to having a child. For example, the fairly high likelihood that our kid will not be vegan, or at least if your kid is vegan, that they will then have kids themselves, because 95% of people go on to procreate and then their kid might not be vegan, and then their kid, and then their kid. And so ultimately, by procreating, we could essentially create an endless chain of carnists who are willing to wage war on the animals and violate essentially our own interests. And I don't really see any good justification for bringing children into the, let's face it, shit system that we have. And I think even most natalists kind of do agree with that. They would agree that the current system we have, even for humans, even though it's nicer times than we have lived in before, it's still not great. We're going to be spending most of our days at work, at school, whatever it is, and then retirement, and then we're going to die of. Basically, our current system is this: school, work, cancer, death. I don't want to put any child into that system. So there's a whole lot of points there. I guess I've bombarded you with, but
no, I'm writing it down.
Right, that's good. Okay, yeah, all right. I'll hear what you have to say, and then we'll just kind of go from there, I guess.
Okay, well, we can address each point.
Sure.
So, preventing suffering. Okay, so the thing is that if the least people there are on this earth, the more wild animals there will be, because obviously we take up a certain amount of space and therefore there's less wild animals. But if we were to decrease, then there'd be more wild animals, and wild animals, there's a lot more suffering in the animal kingdom.
Yeah, so I'm actually not fully convinced by this argument. I think these are made on kind of impossible calculations that it's kind of hard to quantify. Like if we were to actually look at, if you're to research, for example, were there more animals in Britain at the time of the Celts than there are now? The data that you get on it is pretty up in the air. It's, if you ask ChatGPT or whatever, it would be like, we don't really know this. But in any case, the amount of suffering that humans cause to these wild animals is crazy anyway, because obviously we holocaust trillions of marine animals every year. Open air suffocation is the leading cause of death for those animals. We create, in human city spaces, we create giant factory farms. We're holocausting 70 billion land animals per year. And then there's all the domesticated animals that live with us as well, who are being tortured as well in these horrific incidences like snuff videos and stuff online. There's people microwaving cats and crushing puppies and all this horrific stuff that humans do. So I'm not even fully convinced really that there would be less animal suffering overall if humans are here, if that makes sense. I don't think we have any track record of saying that we have decreased animal suffering as a result of us being here. I can't really see any evidence to provide for that. I would say actually we've probably increased it.
As bad as factory farms are, or not so much factory farms, but slaughterhouses are, it is more humane than how a lot of animals get killed in the wild.
No, I would disagree. I think that what happens to animals in... Say again, sorry?
It depends on the animal, but certain like lions will sit there eating a zebra while the zebra is still alive.
Yeah, so any single thing that you see happen in nature, that and worse happens in a slaughterhouse. There seems to be this weird idea pushed largely by carnists, and I've seen by natalist vegans, unfortunately, as well, that the wild is somehow worse than what happens in animal agriculture, and it's not. If you think of the most brutal death you've ever seen in nature, humans just do that every single day to animals. Humans do literally rip animals apart, cut them apart with knives while they're still alive. There's even restaurants where you can live eat animals. There's slaughterhouses, pigs and chickens are boiled alive by the thousands every day. Even just in the UK, pigs and chickens in huge numbers are boiled alive because they're stunned ineffectively, have their throats cut, and then they're just dipped into the scalding tank, while often they're still fully conscious. So we're boiling animals alive. We're putting animals in microwaves. We're cutting them apart while they're still alive. We're gutting them while they're still alive. We're suffocating them on the decks of ships. I can't really see any evidence at all that what's happening in nature is somehow worse than what's happening in human societies and in slaughterhouses to animals. In fact, I would actually say it's worse in human societies because we hold those animals captive and torture them mentally, put them in cages before we boil them alive or cut them apart alive.
Yeah, well, that's why obviously I'm vegan, and I have like, and I will be raising my child vegan. And I know you said, I guess this is going into the vegan, the next point. Well, for me personally, I'll be like a lot of, okay, first of all, if you have children and then you go vegan and then you change their diet, it's less likely to work because they have because they are because they're used to animal products, and then you kind of change it up so kids can kind of be a bit like, oh, this is a new change. But if you raise the child from birth, they're more likely to continue because that is their norm, right? And I probably will stay away from the mock meats because as much as I can, because I just don't feel like a child who's never had meat needs to have mock meat, because it's like, wow, they crave something they've never had. And and that way, like, they pretty much won't really know the taste of meat. And but yeah, like, I think that some vegans might just raise them, you know, like on the diet, but not really explain to them about why we're vegan. And I think that if, well, I plan to take my children once they get old enough. I plan to take my children to not slaughterhouses. I'm not gonna do that. Not until they're much older. No, to sanctuaries, and explain, and like, I'm gonna buy some books. I haven't bought any books yet because she's too little. I'm gonna have like some books, some vegan books, vegan children's books, which I plan to discover in the next couple of years. I've got a while before she can kind of read books, or like listen to books and stuff. So yeah, and then she can, like, I'll be reading them and like really teaching them like the point of veganism. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to like teach our children the real point of veganism, not just the diet. But I'll also be teaching her how to cook, which I know a lot of, like, in the Western culture, they don't teach their kids how to cook. They pretty much treat their kids like as if they're incompetent for like the whole time. And like, like, and then they wonder what, when they magically turn 18, why they just aren't doing everything for themselves. Like, so I'll definitely be teaching my children, like, I'll definitely be teaching my children from a young age how to cook. And so that way, by the time they get to being a teenager, they know how to prepare their own food. And that will like, having those cooking skills and knowing how to cook vegan food will set them up for a better time than if you just constantly are cooking for them, and then one day they have to cook for themselves and they think, oh, it's just easier to buy, it's easier to buy certain things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that is an interesting thing we can go into just now, actually, the whole likelihood of the child staying vegan and blah, blah, blah. There's one thing, though, that I want to kind of pick up on quickly just before we go into that about the wild animal suffering point that I forgot to mention, and then we'll go into that. But would you acknowledge that there's actually no non-selfish reason to procreate? Because this whole wild animal suffering thing, this is something that I only think kind of came into vegan spaces recently with regards to natalism. I think it's this thing that Dr. Avi actually kind of brought in. And I think natalists are kind of using it to shoehorn this fake altruistic purpose to procreate. I don't believe that anyone has ever sat down and said, it's selfish, generally, to have a kid, to put them into work and for all this stuff to happen, and they might not be vegan. However, we must prevent wild animal suffering. Like, would you acknowledge that no one is doing that?
Like, you're talking about ending suffering, and it's like, but you won't end wild animal suffering. You're not going to end all of suffering, and you're not going to reduce it. That's what my point is. It's like, well, I don't think you're going to reduce suffering. And I don't think that, like, I mean, okay, we'll get back onto that topic. But I know that you said you don't believe in bringing like joy and stuff, but I do. And I'm like, I don't know, like it gets down to the point of what's the meaning of life, I guess. And I know that some people say, oh, the meaning of life is to have kids. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that. But like I do believe that, I don't know, I just I think you're like also as well, like, well, if we're looking at the practicality of like, trying to convince people not to have kids, I think what will happen is like this is just on a practical level because like we were speaking hypothetically, but on a practical level, I think that the more caring people like us who do actually think about certain things and probably would make better parents because we are caring, we would be the ones suffering not being able to have kids. Like, I know that you think, oh, we're reducing suffering, but like if someone doesn't have, like for me, I would suffer. Like that would be extra suffering on me if I couldn't have children. I know because when I was like, before I got pregnant and I was trying to find someone, I was very difficult. If I'd hear about someone getting pregnant or have someone having another baby, I would just cry, and like I was like crying a lot and crying myself to sleep and worried that I would be able to miss out on like having kids, and I was very depressed.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
um,
but you know what I'm going to say to this though, don't you? Or maybe you
Hang on,
don't. I
let
don't
me
know,
just finish
Kurt.
my point.
Yeah, go
So
on.
you're gonna create something, and then I think that the non like caring people, they're just gonna have kids and they're not gonna care. So from a practical level, I can see people still having children, and then a small majority suffering because they can't have, because they're stopping themselves from having children when they really want to. And yeah, we're still going to see this rise in, like, we're still going to have people come into the world.
Yeah, it's inevitable that people will still come into the world. My point about as an anti-natalist, well, I'm sorry that you've suffered and stuff, and you were talking about crying yourself to sleep at night and all this kind of stuff. Well, obviously, my point is it was wrong to create you. I don't think that your life has been a net good, as I don't think mine has. I don't think that it was ethical that our parents made us. I think the fact that you've suffered so much in your life, I think it was a moral crime to bring you into existence. Is the point, I guess, with my.
I don't think that, like, yeah, I was suffering and I was sad, but like overall, that's like I have a lot of great things going on in my life, you know?
Yeah, but these were things that you never had any interest in liking before you were born. So all that happened to me and you was, yeah, there are many things we both do enjoy in our life, for sure.
Mhm.
And while we are in existence, we're ultimately trying to avoid suffering every single day, right? We're pleasure-seeking animals. We're constantly trying to avoid suffering and harm, which is why life is so shit.
It's not
That's
shit.
it is. This is the system that we're forced into. It's like
We're not forced to anything. This is just
we how are we
this
not
is
forced into
life.
it? You didn't consent to being born.
Yeah, but like I could opt out, but I don't want to. I don't want to end my
Well,
life.
well, that
I
a
love my
hor-
life.
yeah, but it's a horrific situation to have been put into, isn't it? The idea that our parents just said to us, right, we're going to force you into this thing called life. And well, it sucks, but there is this option called suicide. If there's this, like, what kind of a shit position is that to put our children in, our own flesh and blood? Like, this is why, for me, parenting is essentially just a moral
But
crime.
I
And
don't want to end my life. So I'm saying I don't want to end my life, and a lot of
no, no,
people don't want to end their life.
yeah,
They
but
love life
but
and they
the,
want to
but
continue it.
but that doesn't mean that it was fair, that it was assigned on you in the first place. It was forced upon you in the first place. Obviously, you have interests in living now that you're still alive. Now that you're alive,
Mhm.
we have, just through sheer machine-like evolutionary purposes, this irrational interest, this preference to want to continue existing. despite all the horrific things that can and will actually happen to us, the slow and painful death that awaits us, the horrific murder or rape that could happen to us, or the plane that's going to go down over the ocean that we're on, and the losses that we're going to experience. I see no need to have ever had these things forced on us in the first place when we could just blissfully not exist.
Yeah. See, I have a problem with that because it's like, what's the point of anything then?
Well, but then we get into the whole carnist logic of like, we should breed like the happy cows and they get a chance to exist.
I mean, they can breed on their own and live in like the wild or whatever. But yeah, like obviously you're bringing them into the world to then like be treated like shit and then die. Whereas like with us, it's not like that.
Well, the carnist argument is that we could breed these cows to not be treated like shit. We could give them great, positive, happy lives. I would still say that the one rape that the female cow experiences or the one slaughter means it was unethical to bring them into existence. And when we create as humans, we're essentially committing an act of premeditated murder. We're essentially committing an act of premeditated. We know all these horrific things can happen to our child, right? We know that if we have a child, that they probably will be sexually assaulted if they're a girl. They probably will be violently assaulted at some point if they're a boy. They will get cancer or heart disease or whatever it is. They will experience.
No, you mean they might?
No, they will. They will die. They will.
No, I didn't say they will die. You said if a girl, they will be sexually assaulted. That's not true.
They probably will be.
I mean, there's high possibility.
Yeah, too high to but it's too high to even bother with the risk. I just don't. I
still think that it's worth, like, as a woman myself, I still think it's worth being alive and being able to experience like joy. And I know you said you don't believe in that, but it's like that's the point of life, you know. We experience joy and we experience happiness, but we've got to take all the good with the bad. And there's no inherent way to get permission, as you would call it, in order to, you know, to bring a child into the world.
Yeah, so then don't do it.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, but then they miss out on all the good things.
But why would they care? Because they don't exist.
I think it's like comes down to like
all right. All right.
I think it comes down to a biological urge.
Right, that's what it is. Okay, but Emily, right? Are you sad that there is no joy on Mars, or do you just think?
I don't know if there's no joy on Mars.
We assume that there's no. All right, just point to a planet in the solar system that you know for sure there's no life. The sun. Okay, are you are you sad that there's no joy in the sun?
No.
Then what's the issue? Why are they missing out on you? Because you said a moment ago they're missing out on joy by not being born.
Well, they get to experience joy and all the good things because they're born.
Yes, but what I'm saying is it doesn't matter that they're not born, because, and you even believe this yourself. I don't think you even believe that it's a sad thing that a non-existent entity doesn't exist, because you even said yourself, you're not sad that there's no life in the sun experiencing joy. You just see the sun and it's, who cares that there's no one in the sun experiencing joy?
If someone doesn't want to have children, then I'm fine with accepting that they're not going to bring children into the world. So I'm fine if they don't want to bring children. Like, I'm fine if they don't want to bring children. But like for those who do want to have children, I don't think it's a bad thing, because it's just one of those things, you take the good with the bad.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to argue is the good is not sufficient enough to justify the bad. We don't
I
get
think it is.
upset. Okay, we
I
don't
think
get
it is.
okay, but we don't get upset that there's no joy being experienced in the sun. But if there was, let's say we could just randomly create particles in the sun now for a split second that would feel being burned by the sun, that would be sad, right? You would surely want to stop that.
From someone from dying up in the sun.
Yeah, like let's say, all right, let me phrase this in a different way. What would you think would be a more morally urgent issue? To quickly create an air particle inside the sun that would experience an orgasm, or to quickly create an air particle, or sorry, to prevent an air particle from coming into existence in the sun that would be fried alive? What would be more morally urgent, the orgasm or stopping someone from being fried alive in the sun?
Well, obviously the ending, like the not suffering, would be more urgent.
Right. I guess this is the point I'm trying to make. There's no moral urgency to actually create well-being, to create pleasure from nothing. There's only moral urgency to prevent suffering, to prevent someone from being fried alive or whatever it is. So yes, we take the bad with the good and blah, blah, blah in life. But what I'm saying is, I don't think there's a rational way to actually justify the good from a non-existent being coming into existence to experience good when what's more important is stopping the bad. I think it's more important that you weren't depressed, that you never cried, that you were never assaulted, that you will never experience cancer. I think that's more important to you than you did get married, or you did have a great sex session with your boyfriend, or you did enjoy that video game, or you did enjoy that beautiful meal, or whatever it is. Like,
I feel like you're comparing like the worst things in life to some okay things in life. Like I think that people experience like joy in you know, like not just having a meal, but also just like having the joy of like meeting someone new for the first time that you really like, or achieving that goal that you had, or getting promoted at work, and you've got just like the joy of like making new friends, and obviously like bringing a child into the world, and like having you know and all the great things that come with like those little things that come with like life.
but there's no urgency. There's no need to create any of that. We can just live
Well,
out
there
our
is a
own.
need because well, I mean,
But you said there wasn't. You said you even said that you don't care that there's no one in the sun experiencing joy. So if you don't
I
care about that, that's surely not a need.
well, I think it's hard to get out, but I still feel like there is still like, because again, we have this biological urge, and people are still going to realistically, people are still going to procreate. And I think that our lives would be better, um, you know, when we can have kids, and then, yeah, okay, they're going to have some suffering just like you are, but that's just like the point of life. And you're saying like, oh, there's no moral urgency. I'm like, yeah, well, there's no urgency to have kids, but if you want to have kids, then I think you should. And it's not urgent that you have, and I'm not going to force it on other people that they have to have children. But if you would like to have children and experience that, then I don't see it being a bad thing.
But this is how I guess I think veganism in many ways intersects with. I hate the word intersex.
No, yeah, I know. I was like, oh God, can we just say that?
But I think it intersects with anti-natalism in many ways, because I think the arguments you used there kind of sound similar to the kind of carnist arguments. It's like, oh yeah, we don't need to eat meat, but if I want to, I want to, and I like enjoy the taste of the meat. And it's like, yeah, okay, but what about the beings you're causing suffering to, and that applies.
I don't believe I'm causing suffering to my child.
But you are, because it's you're the reason that they're coming into existence to suffer. Any single ultimately, by the way, I'm not dissing my parents at all. I love my parents very dearly, but any single thing that I've experienced in my life, the harsh reality is it's ultimately my parents' fault for creating me in the first place. It's of course the fault of whoever's doing the bad thing to me at the time. You know, if someone punches me in the face, it's the assaulter's fault. But it's still ultimately down to my parents that they created a being who got punched in the face when they could have just not done that. So a parent is still responsible for all the things that happen in their child's life. Every little thing, every single thing that happens in a child's life is the fault of the parents originally.
I think that she's a little bit upset with what you're saying because she's kicking me heaps. Kicking me everywhere. Yeah, I understand that, like, you're the like, well, most of the time, because I know you're pro sentience, so you don't believe in abortion after 8 weeks, I think it is. Right?
Yeah, I don't actually know the cutoff point at all. It's something, thankfully, I'll never have to think about. Both me and my wife are sterilized, so
I don't have to worry about that either.
Yeah. So that's all. But yeah, I take, before sentience, I guess I'd take a pro-death stance. I think it would be actually good before a fetus has sentience. I think we probably should abort them. But then once they have sentience, I can't see any argument as to how that's different to killing a 2-year-old child. There has to be a cutoff point, because once someone is sentient, that means they're now a rights bearer. They have some form of interest in staying alive, whereas before that sentience, there's no interest there. But yeah, go on.
I don't like pro-life is like with the whole, like, I listen to the pro-life arguments and I'm like, yeah, that's really good. But then I also see points with it being against IVF and stuff. I mean, I guess you're against IVF too, but for completely different reasons. But they're like, oh no, they discard the embryos. I'm like, really?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know much about all these different methods. Again, it's not something that I've massively ever taken an interest in. But yeah, I
didn't until I heard anti-natalist stuff, and then then I got into like pro-life stuff just to hear the pro-natalist opinions.
Did we want to talk about now the likelihood of the kids staying vegan, or did you want to carry on talking about the other thing?
I mean, staying vegan. I guess it's just like.
Well, okay. Let me ask you a spicy question that will get the ball rolling on this. I guess my question to you as a vegan is, why would you, Emily, think that it's okay to gamble with the lives of, I don't know, pigs, chickens, and cows by procreating when you could just not, and you could just ensure that not another single sheep, chicken, or cow would ever be harmed, essentially as a result of you?
So I guess that's just goes down to the fact that my pro-natalist reasons, like, I believe in like that bringing children to the world isn't wrong, and I believe that, I think that it helps society to bring people to assist in further economic development.
Okay, but what I'm more trying to get at here is the lives of those farmed animals that you'd be gambling with by having a child. See, one of the things that would always keep me up at night before I had a vasectomy, like I would literally wake up in cold sweats having nightmares about this, is I get someone pregnant, whatever, and then I've just basically created an endless chain of carnists, potentially, who will wage war on the animals. Whereas I could just end my lineage now and that just not happen. And if I ever did want a kid one day, which I don't want, by the way, I would just adopt, because at least then I've taken someone who's already in existence, and if I can't term them vegan, well, it's not my fault because it's their parents who had them. So it wasn't me. If I was to have a kid, I would do everything I could to raise them vegan if I procreated. But
Same.
it's a massive reckless gamble. Like, there's just no way we can ensure. And unfortunately, we see evidence of this in the animal rights movement. We've seen notable animal rights activists have kids, raise them vegan, and then the kid go on to fund the animal holocaust. So it's like you undo your own veganism by having a kid.
So I guess it's not really anti-natalism, but I guess I'm just so I think what happens is because they're raised vegan doesn't mean they're raised in a vegan environment. And most parents, they send their children to to school, and school isn't vegan.
No.
So they have school friends who aren't vegan.
Yeah.
And they are not taught the stuff about veganism. They're felt like the odd one out. But see, for me, I'm planning to homeschool. So there is a homeschooling community, so they'll have friends and everything. They'll have other homeschooling friends that they'll hang out with and create friendships with. But they won't be in, a building with carnists. So I think the chances of them being indoctrinated by friends and the environment at schools, and they won't have that because they'll be home.
Yeah, I understand the importance of risk minimization, and that's great that you'll be raising your kid in a way to make them as least carnist as possible and ensure that they will. You're doing everything that you can possibly do, it sounds like, to ensure that they'll stay vegan. Unfortunately, the risk though remains, and I just don't see it as an ethical risk to take. These things just can and do happen. Vegans do raise their kids vegan in heavy animal rights environments, and the kid just says, "Mom, I want to eat what the other kids eat," and then, or they rebel. Things can happen as well. Like they rebel against their parents. Oh, my overbearing mother, she forces me to eat vegan food, and I can't eat the Big Mac like the other kids. So, and I made friends the other week with these kids, and they were having cupcakes, and I really wanted one. I couldn't have one, and there's all these fucking pressures that are just surrounding our kids right from birth.
But that's even more reason why vegans would have kids, and then you can surround them with other vegan kids.
But what those vegans should just adopt.
But most people aren't eligible to adopt though.
Well, again, I don't. Then the alternative is that they just don't have kids. I mean, for me, this is just no issue. I mean, it's either you adopt or you just don't have a kid. If you don't get eligible for adoption, then you just say, well, I'm not eligible, because there's no, for me, morally justifiable reason to create someone just because we're not eligible for adoption or whatever it is. Ultimately, as an anti-natalist, I believe that its own. The decision to procreate is just purely selfish. There's no actual altruistic reason to do it, whereas adoption is the altruistic thing, the same as adopt, don't shop with animals. It's like buying a puppy from a breeder or adopting one.
Adoption is altruistic if there's a need for it, which if you live in the West, there is a lot of people who have fertility issues. And so the list is so long to get a child. I know several people in Australia who were on the list for 10 years and never got a child. And they paid out all that money and they couldn't get a child because there's just not that many children being put up for adoption as there is people trying to adopt. So it's one of those things where it's like, but there's no need there. Like, there's no need for people who can who don't have fertility issues to put their hand up. Like, it's not like, oh, we need more people to put their hand up. We don't. That's why you don't see adoption ads, because it's the opposite. there's more of a need for kids to be adopted than there is for people to adopt, because the adoption list is very long. They say that it's a minimum 7 years wait. And with Australia, the cutoff is somewhere in their 40s. So I'm 35. I turned 36 very soon this month. I turned 36 soon. So if I was to put my name down, I guess at the same time, like I had Edna, whatever. If I was to put my name down now, let's just say if I get through it, I have the money and I'm eligible, whatever. 7 years from now, I'll be 42. I don't know, because like people said they don't know the cutoff age. It's somewhere in your 40s. So I don't know the age, but yeah, then I could just like get cut off and said, sorry, you're too old to adopt now. There's no need, like, so yeah, like you're saying like, oh, it's net good, and you're like, well, yeah, if there was a need for it, like if you're in other, like, and some people say like, oh, you should adopt from like third world countries or something, and it's like, yeah, but like you can't legal, like in Australia, and I assume other countries, like other Western countries, you can't legally adopt from certain other countries because of human trafficking reasons.
But for me, all these arguments are just like, it's like someone saying, like it's often hard to adopt like dogs from homes and stuff, because you go to all these like rescue places online and you see all these dogs and it's like, you must have this, you must have that, you must have that. Oh, by the way, you can't have kids in the house. Oh, the dog is not good with cats. Oh, by the way, you'll need to take them on 96 walks a day. They have like a urinary infection, or where they need to pee like 96 times. Oh, and this and that and that. And it's like, well, but then the kind of natalist, as it were, response to that is, yeah, so I guess I just went to a breeder and bought a puppy, because like all that. Like I basically don't see any of these arguments.
There was children like, but there was like dogs to adopt, whereas like there isn't children that need adopting. And like I said, in third world countries, well, you could say there's a difference between, oh, it's too difficult, but there's a difference between it's too difficult or I can't legally adopt a child from Russia or whatever.
But there are kids
you can't adopt, like there's a lot of kids to adopt in Russia, but they won't allow you to.
Okay, yeah. In any case, though, I guess my argument is like, this would be the same as just like you find no dogs that you're able to adopt, so instead you buy one from a breeder. I guess that's the analogy I'm making. In any case, there are loads of kids in need of adoption. I don't know about the exact numbers. Maybe you have the figures. You're saying that there's too many.
No. There's more people on the waiting list waiting to adopt children than there is children to adopt. Because I know. I know people who have been on the, like, and that's the thing, like, oh, your adoption. I'm like, I know people who have been waiting years on the adoption list and they didn't get a child. They got approved, they paid the money, and they were sitting there waiting and they couldn't get. But the difference is that we have lots of animals, right? In, like, I don't know about England, but like we have lots of animals sitting in the pound and they're perfectly good and they don't have any of these other stuff that they could they could adopt.
All right. Well, well, let me phrase the question this way. If it was the case that in Australia there was only a few hundred dogs that could be adopted, and there was a giant waiting list for people to adopt dogs, would you accept a vegan saying, I just went and bought a dog from a breeder because I wanted a dog, but there's only 100 dogs available for adoption in Australia?
I'd have to think about the well, what kind of breeder, like, I mean, the conditions and stuff. So,
well, my point is there would be it doesn't matter what the conditions.
You can provide well, we say adopt, don't shop, because we know that there's lots of dogs losing their lives because they don't get adopted. But I don't know, some vegans are against pets and some vegans aren't against pets.
Well,
But
I'd say I'd say
give them, I guess.
I would say it's an inherent part of veganism that we're against the concept of pets, as in like breeding animals to use as like domestic, toys and whatever it is. We just have a pro-adoption stance, and I guess that kind of intersects with the anti-natalism in that way. I guess is my part of my point, because what I'm saying is, I think kind of the arguments you were using a moment ago, it would sound like to me someone saying, I really, really, really want a dog. And, as a vegan, I believe in adopt, don't shop, but I really, really, really want a dog. Like I'd be really, really upset if I couldn't have one. And there's only 100 dogs up for adoption in Australia. And, the waiting list is 7 years time and blah, blah, blah. And there's all these requirements. So I'm thinking about buying from a breeder. That's how I see the kind of natalist argument.
But that just shows that. Okay, first of all, like saying there's only 100 dogs. Well, no, as in those 100 dogs have already been adopted. There's no dogs to adopt. So that's very different to there's heaps of dogs in pounds that need to be adopted.
No, I'm talking about if there was only 100 dogs waiting to be adopted in Australia. Like you wouldn't.
But there is no children waiting to be adopted because they all got adopted. Like as soon as they get put up for adoption, it's like they have someone. They just got to do the paperwork. So if it takes a couple of months to adopt, it's not because the child is waiting 2 months. It's because the child is just waiting for that paperwork to go through. But they always have a home to they always have parents waiting to come and get that child.
Maybe we're getting our wires crossed a bit here and we're getting bogged down in the sort of minute details. I guess what I'm trying to basically say is I just think ultimately breeding is like buying from a breeder, whereas
like it depends if you believe in domesticating animals or not. Because I as a vegan only believe in reducing the suffering of animal cruelty, like not being cruel to animals. I also believe in human rights and not being cruel to humans, but I don't believe that bringing children into the world is inherently cruel. Just like I don't believe in bringing I know this might be controversial for some vegans, but I do believe in breeding programs for species extinction. And I know I've had some arguments with people about how, oh no, but it's wrong to do that. I'm like, I don't think it's wrong.
Yeah, I think that might be something many vegans actually do have contentious points on. I think there are probably, I know it's that most vegans are against just the concept of breeding animals for some kind of purpose. But I think when it comes to the stuff like species extinction and breeding programs to stop those animals from going extinct, whatever, maybe they do agree with those things, whatever. But were there any other? Let's try and get back to the nitty and the gritty now. Were there any other kind of points against anti-natalism or that justified procreation that you wanted to kind of cover?
I'll have a look at my notes.
Yes, look at the notes.
Because it just depends on your stance, but obviously because some people say, oh, overpopulation, so I've got but I know you're not for that. I know your anti-natal stance has nothing to do with population, but I do have
actually that is one of the reasons. I will say, yeah, I do think we're extremely overcrowded, and I don't know, if you were to take the commute in London or Sydney or whatever, and you see that the tubes are just absolutely rammed with people, Tokyo especially as well, and we have massive waiting lists now for cancer and all these kind of things. I would say that it's massively irresponsible just to pump out more humans into a system that is clearly very overcrowded.
So are you against immigration as well into your country?
It would depend on who the person is and what the
you have resources, like you have limited resources. And so, and the thing is that if English people, like English is in like whoever's a citizen and a resident, right? If English people, they have, like, if they don't have enough children, they'll just immigrate, like they'll just bring more people to immigrate into your country for sustainable economic growth.
Well, I don't want any country to exist, so I mean, it's not really my interest. I want there to be no humans on the planet. So,
yeah, I know that, but like, but you got into the point of overpopulation, so
yeah.
that has nothing to do with like the other anti-natalist points about not wanting any children in there. Sorry, not wanting any people.
But I mean, if my parents created me to say, George, we want to create you to for anti-immigration purposes, like I wouldn't
No. I'm not saying that.
reason.
I'm saying with the whole overpopulation, you're saying, oh, well, if we had more kids, then there'll be more restraint on the resources. Okay, does that mean that you're also against immigration? Because they also do the same thing where they put more, like, because you've only got so many resources built, right? Like the tube, you've only got one resource built, and it's you know, and you have what was it? And would you be against like more people immigrating to the country because it's going to put a strain on the resources?
Yeah, it would just have to go. We'd just have to go over it with a fine tooth comb, as if it were. There would be like a certain, where jobs were needed, where they're not needed, kind of thing. I'm generally pro-immigration, but I'm also pro-immigration control, if that makes sense. So I think there needs to be controls, but I don't agree with just flooding the country with people, and I don't agree with people just popping out kids when there's clearly a huge strain on the services.
See, there's not a huge strain on the services here in Australia. We're like really good. Australia is underpopulated. We miss out on a lot of things that you may take for granted because we don't have the population. And so, yeah, like I see the doctor today. I could, not today because obviously it's nighttime, but if I wanted to see the doctor, I just go straight away. I have all my like medical stuff except for one ultrasound I have to pay for, but like the rest is that. And then I get money, like when, like, not that I'm doing it for that reason. Obviously, you know that I do want to have children, but when I have a baby, I'll be getting like money from the government for having a baby because we want more. The government wants us to have more children. Our transportation is underdeveloped, but it's not overcrowded. And I mean, yeah, like I used to catch the train at peak hour and it would be fine. Like it wouldn't be like, it would be a little bit crowded, but it's not like England or Tokyo or whatever. And yeah, there's so much space here as well. There's a lot of undeveloped, like there's a lot of empty land.
Yeah. Australia is just a giant fucking desert with like a few cities on the coast. It's a very, very weird country, to be honest.
Yeah, well, to be fair, there's a lot, like in the desert, the reason why people don't live there is because it's so inhabitable.
Yeah.
So when people are like, oh, you got land, I'm like, yeah, but we've got a lot of inhabitable land because unlike, you know, kind of, it'll be a little bit more like Las Vegas, but not like, it would be like Las Vegas, like in the middle of the desert, but not like, but there's less water or something. That's what I asked. I said, why don't people live in the desert of like in Australia? You know, because other countries, like look at America, they're all like, you know, look at their states are all in the middle. Whereas us, it's like, we're all like on the outskirts. And they said, because they still have like really big, water that goes into the things. So yeah, I mean, the thing with economic growth is that you're able to create, like with more humans that are educated, you're able to like come up with more solutions in like space and like infrastructure. Like for example, like our trains, like we're not overcrowded, but our trains are really slow. Which is so weird because in America, because I went to America, and the trains are just as slow, but they have so much population, and it's like, but they don't have like fast trains and stuff like you guys, like in Europe and England and stuff. You guys have fast trains, you know, like because I went to England and I know that it was really quick and everything. So I don't know, like America's a little bit backwards there. They don't care about their people. That's the thing. No, I remember when I went to America and they were like, and these two people from Texas were like, oh, you should drive to the city. And I said, oh, I don't really want to drive to the city because I rented a car. And I said, I don't really want to drive. They're like, oh, we'll just get an Uber. And I'm like, well, isn't there any public transport? They're like, no. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
And no, hang on. And then I asked some people at a hostel. After them, I asked some people at a hostel. And they said, oh, why don't you just catch the bus in? I said, I didn't know there was public transport. They're like, yeah, there's a bus. And so I took the bus. You know how much it cost me?
How much?
$2.20. It was like, it was so ridiculously small. And I was like, these people, Americans, were trying to say, no, just catch an Uber and pay like $30 or $40 instead of paying like $2.20 and just catching the bus. It's just some of their mentality as well.
Yeah.
In cars, but there obviously is a lot of Americans would prefer public transport, but like they don't fucking upgrade that. So it's like you've got the population here in Australia. It's different because it's like, well, you know, we don't have the population to like, you know, to fund into like having more public transport. Like as in, you know, to have more trains and buses and stuff, and like I get that, but like in America, it's like you've got the people. If you upgraded the system, to be actually nice and pleasant, then more people will use it, and then they can like don't have to use their cars and stuff. But anyway, that's America. But yeah, I think that, but no, I'm saying like you were like all the resources and stuff. Okay, but like here in Australia, we have plenty of resources, and we don't have enough people to actually develop this stuff. And like I think that you know, we have prosperous when we have population growth, but not too much growth, but not it. That's the thing I've been reading about the economy, and it's you got to have a fine line. You've got to grow, but it can't be you can't be smaller than that. Like you can't reduce, but you can't grow too fast. You can't reduce really fast. Yeah.
Well, I guess my point is kind of what really is the interest of a non-existent child to come into the existence and improve infrastructure or improve resources or anything like that, which are things that only are needed anyway for people already in existence. We can work on ways while we do exist to improve life in the countries that we're in. But I don't see this as some kind of burden for the non-existent to satisfy. I don't see the point in creating. I don't see the point in creating new people, new suffering beings who will cause suffering to other beings as a result of their existence, just to say, oh, you know, my child did this for the economy or something. I just think these are pointless kind of arbitrary things assigned, forced on us once we are alive in this system that we're ultimately slaves to, cogs in a giant machine.
Slaves.
But we spend most of it, we might not be, there's degrees of slavery to an extent. I think we're not slaves like animals and farmed animals are slaves. We're not slaves like that in the super literal sense. But in a sense, we absolutely are slaves because we're born into a system that we didn't consent to being forced on us, and we have no real choice but to actually abide by the rules of that system, or face massive suffering, be it that being out in the cold or being homeless or facing imprisonment.
Does that make you feel like better or worse about being alive? For you personally, being alive?
Well, there's no need for me to have been born, so it doesn't like.
No, I'm not asking that. I'm just saying, like, you being alive already. There's the thought of like this pointless. There's like life is pointless type of thing. Does that make you feel better about the situations you have to deal with, or does that make you feel worse?
I don't necessarily take the position that life is pointless. I think once we're born, I think there's important things that while I'm here, I can actually try to reverse. But these are all humanity's doing. These are all like, while I'm in existence, yeah, there's a load of shit things that I will need to kind of be here to actually reverse. But I don't see any of these. These were all kind of interests that were developed as a result of me, and as of a sad result of humans infecting this planet. Obviously,
what
my
makes you think
position.
you're infecting the planet?
Well, you as a vegan know that we are. Like, look at all the horrible shit that we're doing all over the earth. Like but
we're the only ones that have sentience to actually be able to understand that. Again, animals still suffer in the wild. Like, it's not like everybody was like living in the Garden of Eden and then Adam and Eve come along and ruined it all. Like, you know what I mean? It's like this.
Well, we ruined a lot, didn't we? I'm not saying life for wild animals was great before we're here, but number one, we haven't improved life for wild animals. Number two, I don't think we will improve life for wild animals. And number three, we domesticated animals. Their ancestors are wild animals, and we colonized them. We rounded them up, enslaved them, raped them, murdered them, and they're now the slaves in our modern food system. So I don't think that we've infected this planet. Human history has just been a complete blight, a complete stain on this planet. All that we've brought to this planet is war, rape, slavery, bloodshed, and murder. I don't see any kind of good argument for
that as well. They had murder, like rape.
Yes. Yep.
You know, they have all
and I wish, but that doesn't mean we should just that doesn't give us an excuse to.
Of course not, but we are the only ones. Like, animals don't, or at least don't act on morality. Where we do, we have the idea of, ultimately getting, like, improving the earth and improving life.
Yeah, but it's not happened. We've had how many years to do this now? Hundreds of thousands of years, and we've just not done anything. All we've done is dominate the earth.
For you, but maybe not. Like, in general, like, maybe it's not that long. I don't know. It depends that's your perception. It's been a long time. That's your perception that it's been a long time.
Well, I think we can all agree we've been here for too long and not actually done anything good what have we done that was good? Like, we've been here like for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years if you're talking about our ancestors and stuff that we've actually evolved from. But what have we done on this planet in our whole existence to actually say, thank God humans came into existence? Like, look at all the things we've created. We've created animal agriculture, child trafficking, slavery, war, religion, all of these things that have just been have been a complete blight on this planet.
Well, I mean, has it? I mean, yeah. Wild animals, they torture.
I'm not denying that.
As well.
But yeah, so, but how does that mean that that human existence has been good just because wild animals do that horrible shit? I mean, I don't want wild animals.
They're animals as well. So
yeah,
like, and that's the thing. But I'm saying that, like, I believe that we're a higher sentience. So this is the only reason why. Like, do you think that, like, a cat, a dog, or a cow thinks about, like, ones that are free to, do you think they're kind of thinking, oh, should I bring kittens into the world? Because otherwise, most likely they're going to suffer and die. Like, the fact that we're able to even have this conversation shows, like, it's a higher cognitive thing.
Yep.
So wouldn't you think improve over time? Like, I mean, think about it. Think about the improvements we've had in human like human development. Obviously, like there's certain countries, let's not mention who, but let's not go into who, but like, you know, the Western countries pretty good. Like we have pretty good human rights here. And like,
well, yeah, it took us long enough though. It's fucking, if you look at medieval times and shit, and just the horrific thing, like I don't think it was ever justified that all those humans were sacrificed on the altar of, oh, one day there will be a nice society where, and actually you could even make the argument due actually to animal agriculture that despite the right, if you take medieval England, for example, it was much more brutal, much more brutal from a human perspective. But there's probably now the actual argument that there's probably actually more suffering now in England when we're more progressive and have more rights, because we've now got these giant fucking factory farms.
Oh, right. I mean, we're working on that though.
Well, but we're 99.9% of the world is not vegan. It's not, we're not working on it well enough.
Animals aren't as sentient as humans.
Yeah.
As well.
But
I think it impacts someone more. Just like it would affect you know, a cow would suffer more than a fly.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the higher awareness.
Yeah, but
like animals are pretty good. Like they're kind of just like until they don't have the anxiety. Like they're kind of like, they'll be like, you know, doing their thing, and then if they hear something, then they'll be like, then they get a bit worried. But then if it goes away, they're like, yeah, they can just like easily go back to it. Whereas like humans aren't like that. We're constantly like thinking about the future and like have anxiety over that, but where animals don't.
Yeah, but what's the overall point you're making here? That is it that we need to be here, or that our existence has overall been good on the planet? What is it you're saying as a result?
I'm just saying, like you were saying, oh, but now we've got factory farms, and I'm like, yeah, but I still feel like humans would suffer more in a factory farm than an animal in a factory farm because of our brain.
But that's not any kind of argument that I'm.
No, you just said that, oh, it's worse now because of the factory farms than it was back then. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that it was back then.
Oh, okay. No, but animals are still sentient enough for there sufficiently to be much more suffering. And if you look at the work of like Richard Dawkins, for example, he mentions that animals likely feel pain more than humans do because humans are more intelligent. And animals' pain receptors have to give them a really strong warning to say, don't do that again. You and I, we don't need to stick our hand in a fire to know that that's going to fuck our hand up, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are certain animals where if they get closer to that fire, they might feel that burning sensation in a more intense way than we would, because their pain receptors are saying, don't do that again. Don't do that again. It's a warning signal. So the horrific thing is when those chickens and pigs are being boiled alive, and this is happening right now in the UK and in Australia,
mm-hmm.
they're probably feeling it in a more intense way than we would, or than a human being tortured in medieval times or whatever would, which is the truly horrific thing about what we're doing to animals as well.
Yeah, I think the problem that I have with your stance is the fact that like you think life in general is pointless. And I know you say, oh, but I'm like, but that's what all your stuff is leading to. Like, there's no point in being alive. There's no, because of like the suffering. And like, I do think there's a point to life. I think that is the point of life, is to be alive and do bad.
There's points that we can create for ourselves once we do exist. Like now that I exist, I have motives and stuff in life. I have a point to living. I have a point to doing certain things. I have goals that I want to achieve and desires that I want to act out.
And you wouldn't have that if you weren't brought into existence.
Right. And that would be good, because I didn't want any of these these wills assigned to me. I never chose any of these.
Want that?
Sorry?
What happens if someone does want that?
Well, if they don't exist, they don't want anything.
Yeah, but once they're in the world and they know, then most of the time they don't want to leave. So it just shows that most of the time they want to be in existence.
Yeah, but unfortunately I think this is just how humans are prisons of their own brains. Like it's so if you're talking about suicide, it's an incredibly hard thing for our animal brains to actually enact. But that no less means that our life is an absolute prison cell and that we're kind of forced into. I mean, people even in the absolute worst living situations possible still don't commit suicide, which just shows what a kind of trap life is in many ways. I mean, there's little girls being married off at 3 years old or whatever it is and being acid attacked in certain cultures. Yeah, if they like forego an arranged marriage or whatever, they'll get like acid thrown in their face and be disfigured for life. This happens in places like Pakistan, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a little girl will forego their arranged marriage. They'll say, I don't want to marry this 8-year-old boy or whatever it is, and they'll get acid thrown in their face. You can see this online. And even they don't commit suicide, even though they say my life is a blessing from God. So this just proves what I mean, people can read more into this. David Benatar's book, Better Never to Have Been, talks about how we have what's called optimism bias. Our brain irrationally calculates the good in our life to be worth more than the bad, essentially, and for there to be this kind of point in living, you know. But ultimately, we're forcing people into a prison of their own mind, where even if they're getting raped, acid attacked, trafficked, they still don't want to commit suicide. And then natalists will use this idea that, oh, well, you'd commit suicide if it was so bad, whatever. They kind of use that to prove some kind of point, when even the people they know, people they agree with, should not have been created. The people they surely agree with live a net negative life. Even they don't commit suicide. So I don't really agree with this whole point of whatever you were saying a few minutes ago about, you know, even these people, like they still have a point to living and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, we do have desires and stuff to stay alive once we are alive, because we're genetic survival machines and we're just programmed to stay alive at all costs. But that doesn't mean it was in our best interest to create us. It was actually in our best interest to not create us. We have no need to have all this suffering forced upon us, all these horrific things. If you want to, the book Better Never to Have Been, it opens with this great statement, something like, most parents believe that the best thing to do as a parent is to take their children out of harm's way, yet they fail to realize that the best way to take your children out of harm's way is to not have them at all.
Well, that's your belief, but I think that, you know, like humans have innate value yeah, I think that saying that, oh, well, there's no point to life means like there's no value to it, but I think that it is valuable.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, this whole no point to life thing that you're saying, I'm not saying that once we're alive, there's no point to life. I'm saying there's no point to procreate. I believe that you have a point to life. I believe that I have a point to life now that we're here. Our point to life, in my opinion, is to be vegan and to undo the animal holocaust, which is another one of the fucked up things that humans are responsible for, and why I think humans have just been a complete blight and a shit stain on this planet. But before you and I were born, there was no point to our parents having us other than their own desires. My parents had me because they wanted to have me. Your parents had you because they wanted, but they didn't have us for us. They had us for them.
Yeah, but I don't see that anything wrong with that.
All right, okay. But do you, as vegans, right? We are against the idea of using others for our own interests, for our own means. Do you not think that then that's kind of a contradictory point in some way
I
to
don't think
say
we're
that,
using our children.
well, sure we are. We're saying I'm going to create a little clone of me, a little mini me, because I want to have you. It's like a little pet human that we're having. It's
Okay,
like,
but some people, hang on, I just want to do the whole against mini me thing. It's cheaper for me to use my own egg, right?
Yeah.
If I was to have to use like, and there's people who don't have eggs, you know, or they're like got ruined. So they would adopt, like not adopt, sorry, they would get a donor egg, and there's donor sperm, put them together and put it in then, and when they have their kid, that's not a mini me. So
Right.
there's a lot of people who will do that, and so this whole you just want to create a mini me, I'm like, no, but like obviously I'm going to use my own eggs. I'm not going to use someone else's eggs. Use my eggs.
Yeah.
And also the donor, I'm using a donor sperm, so I don't really care to create a mini version of my donor.
But
so
you're still having a kid, right, for ultimately for self-serving purposes. It's to satisfy you rather than for some kind of altruistic cause, right?
Yes, but I also don't believe there's anything wrong with bringing children into the world, and I think that it's a net like positive to have children and people and continue on life.
Yeah, I'm just not fully convinced by any kind of altruistic argument for having children. I think people use these clever sounding or altruistic arguments just for the selfish reason that they want to have a kid, especially the wild animal suffering.
Selfish means that you don't consider other people in. Okay, so selfish doesn't mean that you do something for oneself. It's when you do, because people do things for themselves all the time, but it doesn't make them selfish. I'm doing this for myself, but I have considered everything. Like that's why when I got a donor, I made sure that it was a donor that was going to be involved in her life, because I'm considering her happiness, and I've considered like what kind of life I'm bringing her into, how much money I have, the resources I have, the support network that I have in case I die. I've thought about all these things because I am not selfish. I've considered my decision, how it's going to impact my family, how it's going to impact my daughter, so it's not selfish because I have considered other people in this, like everybody involved.
Yeah.
But yes, I am doing it for oneself, but I have considered other people and the baby.
But these things you're all considering are all just weighing up just the moral obligations. Those are just the moral obligations you need to serve as a mother for bringing someone into existence who you need not bring into existence in the first place. I'm talking about when a parent chooses to procreate, they're not actually doing it because they believe they're not doing it because it's some kind of good altruistic thing to do for the world, and they're doing it foregoing the idea of all the suffering that they're going to create and just thinking, well, I want a child, and some animals might be murdered here or there, I'm willing to take that risk. My child might be raped or murdered, my child will probably get cancer one day, but I just want one. Like, so that to me is kind of the reckless, selfish gamble that people take as parents by choosing to procreate.
You do that with like everything you do, like in your decision making, like, oh, you're taking a gamble, like when you get into a car, you're taking a gamble that you could accidentally hit someone. And yes, you're taking into the moral considerations of all the things of, oh, I'm gonna drive under the speed limit, I'm gonna follow the rules, and I'm gonna like be vigilant and stuff. But ultimately, when you get into the car, you do certain other things that you enjoy, you're not necessarily like, you could cause harm to another person.
Yeah, sure. No, there are many things I do in my life that I would totally admit that are to a certain extent selfish. But I think one of the most self-serving, whatever you want to call it. But I think one of the most selfish things we can do, one of the most self-serving, whatever you want to call it, things we can do is procreate. And hey,
why is the most?
Because you're creating all of this harm and suffering and
I'm not
taking
creating harm and suffering. I'm creating a person that has
yeah
the
with a
ability
nervous
to
system
feel
and a brain who will
anger.
suffer, who needed not exist.
No, she didn't not need she didn't not need to exist. Like it's one of those things where that is life. Like in order to get the good things, you have to risk the bad things.
No, but why okay, but why impose that risk on someone else? Like I just see that as totally unfair. Like, parents even say life isn't fair.
Life.
They say when you tidy your room as a kid, right? You would have said, no, your mum would have said to you, Emily, got to tidy your room. And you would have said, but mum, that's not fair. And your mum said back to you,
Well, it was more my dad said, life isn't fair. But
right.
yeah, but I'm not planning to be one of those stupid parents anyway. Yeah, so like I guess it's like not just the potential for happiness and fulfillment, but like I reckon they will. Like everybody does have happiness and fulfillment, just like most people. Like
The only two things we can actually guarantee our child, though, is suffering and death. Yeah, there's a good chance your child will have happiness and fulfillment in many areas of their life. But number one, I'm not.
I can guarantee that they're gonna have some kind of happiness.
Well, you can't actually guarantee it, because they might be born with, unless they know already by the pregnancy scan, I don't know. They might be born with some debilitating condition like Stephen Hawking has, or where they're just paralyzed from very early on, or
You don't
they
think that they have the ability to have happiness?
Not in any meaningful way, really.
I don't know. I think that Stephen Hawking like done a lot of things that I think he's very fulfilled in.
Hawking did, but I've seen some horrific footage of people. Like there was this guy in the UK who had to get the right to die. Tony Nicholson, his name was. This was an awful case. He had like locked-in syndrome, and he was trying to get the UK government to give him the right to die. And the UK government kept saying, no, we won't give you the right to die. And he ended up, I think, going to Dignitas in Switzerland, where they could give him the poison antidote thing to kill himself. But he could hardly move a muscle. Like like this guy who was once a young, handsome rugby player, he spent the rest of his life just sitting in a chair, in his own waste, just like crying, and just his every single second was torture. Every single second, waking second of his life was torture. And I think one of the hugest gambles actually we can take by procreating is having one of those children who has such a debilitating condition that every waking second is just torture for them. And they will have no...
And he ended his life though?
He did end his life, but after much fighting for the legal system. Well, his wife had to do the fighting because he couldn't write a single or say. He couldn't speak. He couldn't write anything. So his wife, he could only he had to type through a computer through his eyes. He would just literally look at a screen like that, and I think he'd blink like to say enter. Like it'd take him like an hour to write a fucking sentence. The poor guy. Yeah, he did ultimately end his life. But do you not think that it was unethical that his parents had him because he was forced into that situation? Like that was one of the... This could happen to even if you're... And I strongly hope this doesn't happen to your little girl. Even if it doesn't happen to your little girl at birth, this is one of the things that could happen to her later in life. So these are just the horrific gambles that we take as a parent, like that I just don't think is worth it. I don't think we have the right to impose such horrific risk on someone else.
I think that, I don't know, I think that we do like have the... I think that we do have the right, like we do risk it, because it's, I don't know, like you have that's the point of life. I don't know. Otherwise it wouldn't be any life. I don't know.
Well, good. Well, as I said, I'm not just an anti-natalist. I'm an ethicist as well. I wish that there was just no sentient life at all. I think that sentience was the biggest curse to ever happen to the planet, unfortunately. Like,
we'll have to ask God. Why did you create us?
Yeah, I think
it would be interesting to see why you created us.
Should we take some questions now, Emily? What do you think, or was there anything
Questions
else?
are good. I'm just gonna go to the toilet.
Yeah, let's go. All right, cool.
Cool.
I'll get reading some comments. Right. I'm gonna look through a few of the live stream chats. Oh, blimey! I haven't even been looking. I see that it's getting very. Earther is it says, how common are those cases though? The government didn't give him that right because it's a slippery slope. Yeah, it wouldn't matter if it even was the case that it happened to just one person out of a trillion. I don't think we should appeal to popularity. Otherwise, it would be like a million carnists saying, but we get the pleasure from eating this one tasty giant pig that could feed 1 billion of us or something like that. I don't think that any amount of happiness in the world that people could experience is worth even one person suffering what Tony Nicholson did and being a prisoner inside his own body. I don't think that a giant amount of suffering, I don't think that one person suffering is worth X many people having well-being, because there's no need to create well-being for me, just only to prevent suffering. MJ says, I had epilepsy when I was younger, had kidney stones, wish I'd never gone through it. Vegan Bambi says, making the best of a bad situation doesn't make that life worth it. Yeah, agreed. Like, I do think it's a callous mentality of parents when people just say, like, you can just do this to get over it. Or, depression is one of the common ones. Without depression, you can just take some meds kind of thing. The idea is I don't think a child should be in that situation in the first place. Vegan Pixie Warrior, hey Rebecca, how you doing? Says, I was born with a heart defect that caused me trauma my whole life. Sorry to hear about that, Rebecca. Vegan Bambi, no one thinks their kid is going to be the unfortunate one. I want to see some pro-natalist comments here. I think I had a few from Rosita, but I think it's mainly anti-natalist in the comments.
Because they know you.
We're not actually getting many questions and stuff, Emily. So if people want to put in some questions, super chat priority. But if people want to ask us some questions, if you want to put me on the spot, if you want to put Emily on the spot, feel free to do that. Kingdom Truth. Oh, we totally take you seriously. Look at that profile pic. This guy's anti-babies. I'm not anti-babies. I'm anti-life. I'm anti-procreation. Let's have a look. Here's a good one. Wally Blue. All right, Emily, what compelled Emily to have a baby?
So it's kind of hard to say because I've been wanting to have a baby since I was like 16. I've known that I've wanted to have children from when I was a teenager. And I've just it's just this one, there's a few reasons. One, there's a strong maternal urge to have children. And another thing is that, well, I love babies. I love babies, and I love the idea of raising children. And that's just something that I've always really enjoyed doing. And I don't know, I just find immense happiness in having, being with children and having my own and getting to decide how she's going to be raised. It's just overall happiness, I guess.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Emily. This is a good one here from Rosita. Rosita, what caused you to come to such a dark place, George? I'm shocked. Well, I consider myself generally a pretty, I'm not a super dark, I'm not some kind of emo or something like that. I still experience joy and stuff like that. But if you're talking about what made me become a realist and realize that life sucks, it was me being vegan. Before I was vegan, I was very pro-human. I thought humans were this great thing for the planet. Then I watched footage of the animal holocaust. I tried to convince people to go vegan, and I assumed people would go vegan, and it just failed. I thought everyone would go vegan. I thought I would just show people what happens to the chicks being shredded alive in the hatchery, and people would change. I then realized that humans are not the nice species that we say we are. We cause a lot of abuse and suffering, and people literally don't care. You can show them all the footage that you want. You can make all the convincing arguments that they want, and they don't care. I then came across Gary Yourofsky shared some raps by the animal liberation and anti-natalist rapper Mistro on his Facebook page. So I was loving his songs, and I got looking into anti-natalism as a result of that, all the horrific things.
Is that Gary Yourofsky?
Yeah, Gary Yourofsky.
Gary.
He shared a rapper called Mistro back in the day. He was an anti-natalist and animal liberation rapper. And yeah, I as a result of Mistro's work, I became very disillusioned with kind of humans, the fact that our existence causes so much harm on this planet. And from there, I also got looking into the suffering we experience as humans and how it's just not worth our parents risking gambling with our lives like that, toying with our lives when we can, and just shoving us into the foray of rape and torture and death. So I became an anti-natalist in about 2015. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Rosita. My wife Rachel's in the comments. She says, I love babies too, but I'm not selfish. Ivy says, can't wait to make a proper comment about this when this is uploaded as a proper video. I agree with everything George is saying, although I do sympathize with Emily's feelings. Okay, good one here from Deborah. As a vegan, how does Emily justify bringing another human into the world who will intentionally or unintentionally cause animal suffering?
I think we already went through that.
I guess we did, but you're in the hot seat now with the comments, Emily. So
okay. So again, I will. Oh, okay, so we'll go on. Like I already kind of covered that intentionally. Unintentionally. I mean, like again, I think there's going to be animal suffering whether humans exist or not. So I still think, obviously, like I'd prefer to not. Like obviously, I try to do as least amount of harm to animals and to humans as possible while I'm here. But again, I do believe in like having children and that it's an intrinsic value, brings value to people's lives, and like that's the whole point of life, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, by the way, Emily, for doing this live stream, because I know you're kind of in the hot seat there as an expectant mother, and it's kind of a bit at you or whatever. We've got another one here that's good. So I appreciate you facing these comments. Will you feel guilty, Emily, if your daughter develops a severe mental illness or health problem you couldn't foresee?
So as far as mental illness goes, no, because I'm mentally ill myself and I still love my life. And so like I think it's sad if they get like severe mental illness and everything. But I won't feel guilty. And health problem, I don't know, like I know some, like one of my best friends, she has a really bad health problem, and yeah, like she has suffered a lot because of that, but ultimately she does want to she does enjoy life, and she has her moments just like everybody else, like where you have good and bad.
Okay, so, cool. All right, Haz Vegan says, life is beautiful and precious. How you doing, Haz? I agree with you that it's precious once we come into existence. I think we have a strong interest in wanting to stay alive, as do animals, which is why I see murder as an abhorrent crime. I don't think life is beautiful. I think there's many beautiful moments in life, many, many beautiful moments, but life overwhelmingly is not beautiful. You're going to be chained to an office desk or whatever for most of your life, or for the animals that we murder and abuse throughout our lives before we're vegan, it's certainly not beautiful. Yeah, overwhelmingly, I would say life is very ugly, cruel, but our brain is, due to optimism bias, we trick ourselves into seeing it as overwhelmingly beautiful, just as a survival mechanism, as a coping mechanism.
But life is in the brain, really.
There you go.
Life is in the brain, though. Like it's all about our perception of reality, not what reality like is. It's how we feel about it.
Rebecca here, who's an adoptive parent, says, I just want to say that being a parent is the hardest and most frustrating job I've ever had. Don't get me wrong, I love my kids, but it's not easy. Yeah, it's another thing to actually take into account, actually, for vegans who want to have kids. And Rebecca did this as an activist, and credit to her. She's still doing activism and stuff. But there are so many vegans who actually have kids, and they don't understand how hard it is and how frustrating it is and how challenging it is. And Rebecca could tell you that, vegan pixie warrior.
Oh yeah, she adopted.
Yeah, she
we
did.
talked about it ages ago.
And it's amazing she's still doing activism. But what I was just saying is there is a lot of vegans who don't consider just what a massive, massive task it is. I don't think they weigh it up. And unfortunately, a lot of vegans drop out of activism as a result of having kids. So, guys, if you are choosing to adopt, procreate, or whatever, just know Rebecca will tell you it's very hard.
I think when the kids are little, you kind of drop off, but then as the kids get older, you can come back onto it and everything. So,
Olawali Blue says to Haz, who said life is beautiful, people that commit suicide and have debilitating illnesses would beg to differ. Yeah, I agree. I do agree that life is, as I say to Haz, I agree it's precious once we're here. We want to stay alive, and murder is wrong, but I don't think it's beautiful overall. Rebecca says, I'm already bringing up my adopted kids to adopt and not pop. Wow, so a vegan and an anti-natalist parent sort of there all in one. So that's interesting. After Rosita says, congrats, Emily. I'm excited for you. I'm glad that you didn't go the anti-natalist route. Did you want to answer that?
Yay, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I think that as much as the thing is that in the West, at least, people are having less children, so there is less children to adopt. So if you, like, for Pixie Warrior, if you are teaching your children to adopt, then just let them know that, like, there may be a chance that they might not get a child. So sort of thing.
Yeah. And Rosita,
and also to save up and, as she would know, save up and apply young.
Yeah, and I get on well with Rosita. So Rosita, if you want to reach out for me to either come on for a live stream and discuss anti-natalism, or you want me to just send you the stuff that I saw that made me become an anti-natalist in the first place, I'm happy to do that. But there's a whole world of literature and shit that I guess a lot of people should look into, because I guess to the average person, anti-natalism is going to sound a bit crazy, a bit wacko. It probably did to me before I came across it, because, you know, I thought like everyone, oh, life is amazing and who wouldn't want the gift of life, whatever. But then I came across the arguments and I'm no longer convinced. I think this guy sounds like a carnist, this Seamus C.
What's he say?
This woman seems to have a natural happiness to her, which is surprising for a vegan. But I'm glad she hasn't embraced the full anti-human mentality of hating life. I assume this dude's a carnist, whatever. We can be happy as vegans, Seamus, but we just acknowledge the bullshit that you lot cause on this planet by putting animals through a fucking Holocaust every day. I don't know if you want to answer anything with regards to that.
Yeah, I do think that there is a very big correlation between being vegan and being anti-human. But I also, as you already pointed out, there's a big correlation between being vegan and being like left-wing as well. So
fair enough. All right. And then Vegan Bambi says, why did she go the donor route, and how much does she know about the donor when it comes to their health history and looks? Is he a good-looking guy, Emily?
He's all right. Yeah, I mean, I believe that beauty is subjective. So when you say like, so I went down the donor route because I couldn't find a partner, and I was just getting sick of dating. And if you want to check out more like of my whole story, I have it on my Substack. which goes down. Like I haven't mentioned that I haven't mentioned on there that I'm pregnant and that I'm becoming a single mom by choice yet. But I have, but I do talk about like my dating history and why it's been so hard and everything like that. And then how much does she know about the donor? So we're like, okay, so I met him off of a website. I met him off of a Facebook group called Sperm Donation Australia, where they go on this group and then they offer donations and people come for donations. There's a bit of surrogacy in there, and just like anyone like looking to have children need like egg or sperm donations or whatever. And then they have, so I met my donor in real life, obviously, because otherwise how would I have done it? But I met up with him and we had dinner and everything, and then I decided that he seemed really nice, and we've kind of continued a friendship since then. Health history, I wasn't too, like, he told me that he hasn't. Okay, so my donor actually was raised in the foster care system, which is why he wants to assist in people having children, because he believes that family is really important. And he can't wait to have his own family. And that's because he didn't have a family growing up. And so it's like he's gone down like the opposite way, I guess, to anti-natalism. So I think that, so he doesn't really know much he doesn't know his dad at all, like his biological dad. He doesn't, he has other siblings that he kind of knows, and his mum, and his health history is like, I don't think he has anything serious or major in his health history, but he obviously, he's healthy as well, so he doesn't have any issues. And as far as looks go, well, I know what he looks like, and I believe beauty is subjective, so I didn't really go off, if I thought he was like hot or whatever, because I don't believe that. I believe that it depends on like how well you look after yourself and other people's personal dating preferences to how attractive you are, if that's what you were going with.
Cool. Right, I've got a whole load of questions I've starred here so I can keep track of them. So
my cat is trying to like, hang on, Tiggy, you didn't come in. Oh, I let her in.
I'll answer this one quickly while Emily's out. George, are you going to see Pro Extinction? I'm not sure I know about it, so yeah, let me know about that. Okay. Oh, very cute. All right. There's one for you, Emily. Vegan Pixie Warrior asks, she mentioned earlier that she won't allow her daughter to suffer. How will she prevent this?
I didn't say that I won't allow her to suffer. I meant like I will be doing like everything I can possibly to not have her suffer. I think I can't remember what that was, like what my point was, but if it was I considered how she was, like how she'd be raised and all that. So that was just to say that I wasn't selfish, because I did consider everything involved. So not sure.
Cool. All right. Jeremy says, would you anti-natalists feel guilty if you took someone to the hospital to fix their broken finger, but a car unexpectedly hit them on the way, causing crippling chronic pain? That's totally disanalogous, Jeremy. They're already in existence, and you're taking this risk for their own interest. Before someone exists, there's no interest in them coming into a world of risks, a world of cars hitting them, a world of finger breakings. So if you're comparing something accidentally happening to someone you're trying to help who already exists to forcing someone into a world of harm and rights violations and all these things that you'd need to do once they exist, then I'd just say that's totally disanalogous. Has Vegan says another world is possible. The current state of the world is responsible for a lot of the pessimism. Not that having kids is a solution, but it's also not the cause of mass harmful ideologies. Well, in order for these ideologies to exist, humans need to exist. So, yeah, is another world possible? I don't know. We're trying while we can to fix that, but it's not working very well. So this is why I just think that, yeah, we can try as much as we can while we're here to do something, but ultimately, I don't have maybe the optimism that you has. Did you want to say anything on that, Emily?
Yeah, like having less people won't fix won't make people behave better. So.
Okay, cool. All right. Josh Banks says, are there alternative solutions that can be put in place to minimize suffering other than ending the human race, i.e. raising a vegan nation, technological improvements, and societal change? Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. I guess this is what we're all ultimately trying to do. I just don't see having procreating as some kind of way to do all this. I think we should, with the humans already in existence, I think we should come up with solutions. Emily?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm pro-natalist, so I believe like life is awesome. And yeah, okay, obviously there's people that do suffer and stuff, and that's unfortunate, but majority of the time people have pretty good life. And yes, we should be obviously raising a vegan nation and be trying to improve that, improve life over time. Yeah.
Yeah, how is the question to raise a vegan nation, but that's what we're trying to do. All right, Flores says, what do you both say to this pragmatic point? It's beneficial for the vegan movement to make more vegan babies. The Christians and Muslims are doing it. There's no such thing as a vegan baby. If you have a kid, Flores, you have no idea if they're going to grow up to be a vegan.
You can say the same for Christianity, but it's most likely if they're going to be raised in a certain way, then they're going to be more likely to be vegan than a Christian or Muslim.
Yeah, well, I just want to say why I think the Christian-Muslim point is actually disanalogous here. The reason that Muslims, for example, can actually increase their numbers by having kids is because they instill in their child a fear of hell from day one. They say, this is the religion, this is the facts, this is the truth. This is Allah, your God. This is the Quran. This is a factual. You can't disagree with it. If you disagree with it, you'll burn in hell in a lake of fire for all eternity. So that is how a child is trapped within religion from day one. Veganism doesn't have that fear factor. Flores, if you were to have a kid, you could raise them vegan all you want, but if they don't give a fuck, they don't give a fuck. They're not going to be punished for it. Society's going to actually reward them for not being vegan. So you might as well just adopt. And also, we see this time and time again that notable animal rights activists have kids and they grow up to not be vegan, or something happens, or their kid says, I want to eat what the other kids eat. It just doesn't work in the same way. So every vegan activist, you know, Flores, who you admire, comes from non-vegan parents. Every single...
I don't think that's what he means. I think what he means is that like the Christians and Muslims are having children and raising them non-vegan, especially Muslims.
What he's saying, he's saying that the Christians and Muslims are making babies and those babies are Christian and Muslim, like to increase their numbers, and therefore
no. I think what he means is there's a lot of Christians and Muslims that are creating that are having lots of children that are non-vegan. So it would be good to have children and raise them vegan.
Yeah, unfortunately, that could. Unfortunately for us, that could be your child who grows up to not be vegan. So you might.
And a lot of Christians grow up to not be Christians.
Yeah.
And Muslims grow up to not be Muslims.
All right. Let's go on to this one from Lawrence here. Now, Lawrence says, would Emily see herself as at least partly responsible for all the harms that befall her child once they exist, given she ultimately created them knowing all these things could happen?
I mean, yes, but I can also say the same thing about her joy as well and her accomplishments and all the good things that happen for her is because of my like being responsible, and not just for the fact that I brought her into existence, but the fact that I'm prepared to give her a life where I, raise her with love and kindness, and I want to teach her things from a young age so that she's well equipped. I'll be responsible for that as well. You take responsibility for everything.
Okay, Flores says wokeism destroys the meaning of veganism, spreads mental illness, and alienates sane people who should be vegan. Agree. Anti-natalism among vegans similarly makes veganizing the world much more difficult. I actually don't see any evidence for that, Flores, for that second statement. I actually think it would make veganizing the world easier if we can sensibly reduce the amount of people in the world so that fewer farmed animals are brought into existence. If we can spread our ideas to already existing people without creating new potential carnists, then I don't see any real argument that veganizing the world is going to be more difficult by being anti-natalist. Again, it's just a massive, there's no real data, I don't think, to say that vegans procreating makes a more vegan world. Vegans have always procreated throughout history, and it hasn't, as a result of that, made the world any more vegan. I think most of us here are vegan actually because we were raised non-vegan and we came across something that made us go vegan. I don't think any of us here in the comments have been created from vegan parents. So
It hasn't like been that long veganism though, because I think it came out more in the 50s, right?
well, the Vegan Society was created in the 1940s, but vegans have existed throughout history for thousands of years. We have like the work of Al-Ma'ari, for example, and we have the people in ancient Greece who would have been known as like the Pythagoreans, for example. But the the word vegan, as we know, it was coined in the 40s by the Vegan Society.
Yeah, but there's also like a lot more food in certain cultures that are vegan friendly because of that reason, right? Like there's a lot more traditional dishes and stuff, so it'd still be good. Like it still helps. Like in like India, like Indian food, a lot of it is vegetarian or vegan food, so it's still like good. Like because I can go to an Indian restaurant that and potentially get something vegan. Whereas like if I go to like an Australian or American type restaurant, I mean obviously times have changed now, but before it was like salad and a crappy one at that.
Okay, Steve Lives says, my life has been horrific. I'm pretty sure my mother didn't want me to suffer either. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Steve, that you were put in that situation. And I guess everyone who's a natalist who says, but my life has been good, I would just say it's an unfair kind of trade-off, and that there's always going to be people who have just ultimately horrific lives, even if their parent says to them, says about them, don't worry, I'll ensure that they have the best life possible. Did you want to counter anything on that, Emily, at all?
I mean, it just depends on your perspective. I don't really know what he means by horrific. Like, does that mean like physically or mentally, stuff like that?
Cool.
I need more context.
All right, let's have a look at some of. Trump said the weather is a Chinese hoax. Is this true? I don't know what that has to do with it, but I thought I'd flash that up. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, yeah, I don't think there's that many more questions.
Oh, I am starving anyway. It's been like 2 hours,
yeah,
and I need to have something to eat.
Awesome. Me too. All right. guys, well, thanks. I guess we will end it there. Oh, we do have one super chat just now from Lawrence, actually. Oh, wait, no, we don't. That's not a super chat. That's actually what we asked earlier. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's it. Thank you then, guys, for tuning in. Special thank you for Emily for coming into this and facing such a contentious topic as a pregnant woman, and for not being for not being triggered by the debate. So I think you did
I
a great
already
job.
knew what I was heading into, and I'm the one that suggested it anyway.
You knew exactly. Yeah, you proposed it. So there we go.
I'm like, well, I proposed it, so I can't really be upset.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed listening to this and you got something out of this. And yeah, and everyone, please share the video if you want. If you found it an interesting debate, message me or Emily if you want more of our perspectives on these things. For any of you, for those of you especially who are not familiar with anti-natalism, who want to learn more about it, please drop me a message. And yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you, Emily, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.